Welcome back to The Operators. I'm Anatoly, and today we're talking with Julio Acosta, a licensed mental health counselor and clinical director at Sound Advice, a hybrid therapy and life coaching practice based out of Doral, Florida. Is it Doral or Dural?
Doral, yeah.
Doral. What caught my attention about Julio is that he's not just running a therapy practice, he's building something that bridges mental health and career coaching, including what he calls AI era career guidance. He's also doing something that a lot of early career clinicians dream about, but very few pull off. And he's building his own practice while serving clients across multiple platforms. Julio graduated from Florida International University, recently defended his master's thesis, got licensed, and immediately started building. He's bilingual, serves everyone from kids to seniors, and has a five-star rating from 88 reviews on Grow Therapy, which tells you something about how he shows up for his clients. Julio, thank you so much for joining us.
No, man, thank you guys for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Let's start at the very beginning. What drew you to mental health counseling? Was there maybe a moment where you knew this was your path?
So, I never really knew that psychology or counseling therapy was the exact thing that I wanted to do, but there was a specific moment where back in high school, we took a trip and there was a lot of other schools that stayed at the same hotel as us. And there was one particular school, there was an all-girl school from Puerto Rico. It was like a fine art school, and the chaperone there, I remember she was like a very, very energetic woman. Uh, it's one night we all a little bit jet lagged and we all go down to like kind of like the lobby to get some pizza. And I see her there just kind of chatting it up with almost everyone. And at the time I'm like, okay, cool. Like I wonder, I rather talk, see what's happening here than go to sleep. So uh it starts off organically, and then before I know it, we're all sitting around in a circle, and she's just kind of leading the conversation. And then she kind of asks, she says, "Okay, now that there's a lot of people, this is the perfect time to do this." So I almost feel like she knew what she was doing. She was doing it intentionally. So she asked all of us, when it's our time to go, what do we want to leave behind? How do we want to be remembered? And at that time, I was 16, 17. I've never been asked that question. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And everyone was kind of going around and answering, saying all of their ideas. And then for me, all I kind of said was, I just want to help people. I said that out loud, but then on the inside, when and she had to stand up. When I sat back down, I was there, I'm just kind of looking around and I'm like, I want to help people like how this conversation helped me. And I remember that was the first time I've seen anybody be as authentic as, these people are, I go to school with them, yet they're being completely authentic and open to this random lady that they just met just a couple days, just a couple hours ago. Um, and I go, okay, what does that look like? Therapy? Okay, good. Let's do it. And I never look back, and I understand that my origin story may not be like the most common, or it may not be like a moment of alignment that doesn't necessarily happen with everyone. So that's why I kind of want to focus now that I'm at the space that I'm at to like help other kids, specifically in high school, with that same question of what they want to do with the rest of their life. And we'll speak a little bit about that later about like, the my ideas with the AI era career guidance, but that essentially is what drew me to counseling.
That's awesome. Yeah, and just that question alone sent my mind flying because um, I feel like I've asked myself that question but never truly answered it. And also that's a question that probably I would change my answer to every 6 months. And maybe that's just part of development, but I love that question. That's an excellent question. And it's probably one that I'll come back to after
Yeah.
we're done filming this. Probably over a cigar. I'm a big time cigar enjoyer. And you
Yeah.
went through IFU's program and recently defended your master's thesis. What was that journey like from student to actually being licensed and seeing your own clients?
I remember starting and being extremely optimistic, ready to go. And there was a huge change between learning things theoretically and then just actually applying them. Because out of the 2 years that the master's took, the first year was doing an internship at the university. The second year was doing an internship in the community. So we had to go out, interview, and all this stuff. I remember the first year was all about manuals and going by the book and step one, session two kind of thing. That's the expectation I had going into it versus the reality of a private practice that second year. My supervisor at the time, another person that I thank to this day, she threw me and the other two people from my cohort to the wolves. No manual, no guidance, figure it out. For the first 2 months, that was extremely hard, especially after following a year of just manuals. But it's what led me to have, stand up on my own 2 feet. And of course, what that looked like 2 months two and what that looks like now are completely different. But I'd say it has a lot to do with the drastic difference of expectations versus reality of what it was like to learn things theoretically and actually apply them because it is never by the book, you know.
It never is, and I had a very similar realization after doing the co-op programs that I just told you about offline. It was I actually studied in university civil engineering. My dad was an engineer, an electronics engineer, got his degree in Odessa, Ukraine, back in the day, and I always thought that because this maybe creativity slash communication skills were lacking in me at that time, I found the most use in my capability to be around the technical stuff, the STEM. And going into university and doing all the theoretical stuff, all the calculations, design, structural design, and then arriving to the construction site, it was like a night and day difference in terms of what we did. So what you just said resonates with me a lot there. And tell us about sound advice. What is the practice? Who do you serve and what's the setup?
So the idea with sound advice is not just therapy, not just life coaching, but also a community, right? Like one of the ideas that I have to launch this year is essentially a group therapy for specifically teenagers because that's I'd say that's like teenagers and early adolescence. It's like my biggest population, and a lot of the times I find myself kind of I don't want to say repeating myself, but they all tend to have the same kind of like innate problems, whether it's self-esteem and anxiety, or whether it's, paralysis about the future. And instead of me saying all these things 10 different times, how about I say that just once in front of all 10 of them? And, you know, there's a lot of red tape and there's a lot of lines that within the scope of therapy that I just can't do, but it doesn't necessarily exist with life coaching. So that's why I designed it that way. That way I could go above and beyond and really give these people more of what they need rather than just sticking to, what works.
And so with teenagers and early adolescents, clients that you do have, I mean, what's the best way to get them engaged? Is it usually through one-on-one conversation, or do you feel that maybe something like along the lines of content or podcasts would be another thing or another avenue approach of reaching them? How do you plan on kind of going from one-on-one to one to many?
Right. That's a good question, and truthfully, it's going to be hard to get them to one to many just because social anxiety. A lot of them are not going to be open to uh, seeing saying all these things in front of other people, and I get that. But this year, aside from the group, I also plan to launch my social media, whether it's the Instagram, whether it's the LinkedIn content, whether it's I have a YouTube ready and planned. It's just more about the time and the intention because, actually running the company and then seeing the clients, it takes a lot out of the day.
100%. And uh, I also want to talk to you offline in regards to something that we're building around content because we've been running into similar issues where it's just between all the different things that we're doing, like we would have, let's say, our Fathom recorder or some sort of recording sitting in a call, but it's like, how do we convert that into insights um, with minimum time spent as opposed to having to like brainstorm content strategy and bring on an editor and bring on a scheduler. There's a lot that's involved within the content. So I love where your mind is going with that. Would love to talk to you about that later.
Definitely.
Um, and you describe your service as a hybrid therapy and a life coaching practice. And that's not something that we see a lot. What made you decide to combine those two offerings? Was it the fact that the teenage and early adolescence clients that you have, it's typically a very pivotal moment in their life where they run into both, and those two uh, are very often intertwined?
I did it for primarily two reasons. The first one was like kind of like how I mentioned to go above and beyond and give them more of what they need. Because a lot of the times, yes, there are mental diagnosis and mental disorders, whether it's generalized anxiety, major depression, but I personally think that those two are primarily emotions. At some point in our life, we're all going to feel those things, but mostly what they need is their mindset to be changed. I see a lot of them live their life with limits, and those limits are self-imposed, you know? So I I view myself as one of these people who used to have limits and self-imposed limits, of course. So I'm a big component of like practicing what I preach. So uh, I wouldn't necessarily tell them to do something or live a certain way or think a certain way that I myself don't think. And that's one of the reasons. The second reason was you know, um, aside from just me, it's my best friend and my wife who are life coaches at Sound Advice. And the fastest way for them to see clients was to get their life coaching certification rather than the 6 years is going to take them to, get that master's. So it was a detour to be here with me. Yes, they can't do exactly the same. They're not allowed to see insurance clients. All the clients they have to see are private pay, but at least is a faster way for me to not be by myself in the front lines. You know, just having them two as bodies there with me, it helps.
Absolutely. And you also offer services through platforms like Growth Therapy, Headway, and BetterHelp. How did you think about that structure, your own practice plus these three platforms?
So the way I kind of looked at it was since Sound Advice right now is doesn't have its own brick and mortar office, and the offices that I do use for in person are right downstairs in my apartment complex. They have, offices that I could use. Um, growth therapy, Headway, BetterHelp, these are just a way for me to cast a wider net for my virtual clients. And the way I look at it and the way I frame it to them is that they are clients of Sound Advice. Growth Therapy Headway is just a vehicle that we use to for the billing or the coding and the notes and the EHR. So that's the way I look at it. It's a wider net, but it's all through Sound Advice.
Nice. And walk me through your typical day. What does running Sound Advice look like on a regular Friday?
You know, aside from seeing the clients, there's also a bunch of phone calls that might be coming in about people wanting to schedule an appointment. There also might be some clients that weren't scheduled that day that might, need something or need to speak about something importantly. And then the other most important one, dedicating time to the business. I think Sound Advice right now is in that foundation stage. It's in the, and to me, I want to pour as much cement as possible, one coat, two coats, three coats over and over again. So there's a lot of team meetings that I have. There's a lot of things that I have that, you know, I give myself and my team like a lot of like presentations for them to do to show us how they could turn sound because I don't want Sound Advice to just be my dream. I want that to be my wife's dream. I want that to be my best friend's dream. And the best way I could do that is by, hey, here's this path that I'm carving. How can you carve your own path within the road that we're going down so far? That way, it could be like a ecosystem. That would be the preferred outcome.
And especially anyone that's involved in a business, it's getting everyone's buy-in is a part of it is getting them and not just delegating, but helping them shape the company in a way where it's like, hey, this is your field of view. This is your area in which this is your mastery. How do you want to shape it in a way that you see a future and you
For
see yourself
you.
being a part of that?
Definitely. I want them to, spearhead their own ideas, whether, for example, the first kind of like important meeting that Sound Advice had was I had finished reading a book. It's called Choose Your Enemies Wisely by Patrick Bet David.
Hmm.
And within that book, the core message was the 12 building blocks of a business. He was speaking how there's the emotional side and the logical side. And sometimes people have one, sometimes people have the other. It's important for you to have both. Um, and I agree with that completely. So I actually did this July 4th last year. I did the presentation and you know, built my building blocks and I did that presentation for my wife and my best friend, and I tasked them with a challenge. Hey, I'm gonna give you guys X amount of time. I bought them each a book. I want you guys to read this book. I want you guys to give me the presentation about how you could turn Sound Advice into your own dream and your own building blocks. And just last week we did that. So that was awesome seeing it, go full circle.
Nice. I love it. And within sound advice, what takes up more time than you expected it would?
The thing that takes up the most time, truthfully, is just seeing clients. I see about 9 or 10 clients a day, and I'm thankful that I work from home. So if I need to have a session while walking around, there are certain clients that complete are totally fine with me doing that.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, um, so it's just hard to do everything it takes in one day. So I have a lot of reminders, or I'm looking at a big whiteboard erasable marker that has two sides, and it's just full of notes that I need to just scratch off and do. So it running the business and seeing the clients simultaneously is what ultimately takes up the most time.
And between 9 to 10 clients a day, I mean, is it that you schedule all of them via phone call? Do you usually text them? How do you typically keep that communication between yourself and your clients?
They have my personal number, and the good thing that I like to do is I don't like to unless there's a client that's ran into an emergency or needs to reschedule ahead of time or can't make it that day. Every client that I see on Mondays are the same clients that I see every single Monday. So I kind of organize my schedule to I know I'm seeing the same people on the same days every single time.
Mhm.
And to me, I just like that uniformity.
And
It
how,
makes it easier to plan around.
absolutely, absolutely. When it's already pre-scheduled and you have that set time, it makes everything easy. And with the clients that you have, how do they typically find out about you? Is it that you run ads? Is it through word of mouth? Is it through some sort of cold outreach? How do they find out about sound advice?
Yeah, so we have a website, soundadvice.care. We're also on Psychology Today. And then the other way is that Growth Therapy and Headway, they often give me referrals. Right now, those referrals are off just because my caseload is full. But
Mhm.
usually that's how it is. Word of mouth is a big one too. And then prior to Sound Advice, I used to work at a community mental health clinic, and thankfully, my time there a lot of those clients remembered me and a lot of them chose to follow up with me after I left. And I'm beyond grateful to them for
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
And it's a great problem to have when you have so many clients that you just don't have enough time to service them all. I mean, it means that you're providing a great service that people are very happy with. In your case, like, how do you see yourself scaling, or do you see yourself more so maintaining the people that you have and keeping it at that head count and just focusing, hyper focusing on the clients that you do have?
Yeah. So I understand and I'm well aware that the way I'm going about things, it's not going to be sustainable. I cannot continue to do this for 5, 10, 15 years just because of burnout. So the main priority within the next couple of years is to bring 3 to 4 interns on. And the reason why I'm cautious about that, or I have to wait, the reason why I can't do it right now is because to get licensed, you need to have a state approved supervisor, and you need to become a qualified supervisor through the state of Florida, for example, to be able to give those 100 hours that interns need to become licensed mental health counselors. I'm waiting to be able to get that super qualified supervisor title. That way, when these interns come, I could also be their supervisor, not just in work, but also through their qualifications. Um, and that's when I take a huge step back from seeing all the clients that I do, lowering the amount. I love what I do, so I don't want to ever stop, one-on-one therapy, but at least it'll look a little bit different where I go from seeing the clients and being on the front lines to more of like teaching, supervising, just giving the interns the tools that I've developed throughout years. That way they can continue the good work primarily. That's the only way it could grow. And I'm sure at that point I'll have them all four of them read the book too and turn them into have them build their own version of sound advice. That would be the ideal.
Yeah, and seeing interns grow and bringing on staff that are fresh and motivated, there's something very rewarding about seeing the growth of a pupil or an intern.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. Um, it's something that I feel like I remember back in my master's program, and there was something so therapeutic in and of itself of just all of us students complaining and just saying how tired we were or how overwhelmed we were by specific cases to our teachers at the time. And I'm excited to be on the other foot of that by being like, the one just giving the advice and helping them through that. That's something that I feel like it would be a nice change.
And what's been, I guess, the biggest operational challenge in building sound advice? Is it just the time management, given that the free time is so low between working in the business and on the business, or what's been the biggest
You know,
operational hurdle?
the time management thing is just I think it's always going to be a thing. I don't want to say that's the biggest because it isn't. It's just one that I have to navigate because aside from that, mm, you know just 4 months ago I had my baby daughter, and like that's a whole different thing that I want to devote enough time to as well. She's also a priority of mine. I think the biggest challenge is understanding that this takes time, understanding that as many ideas as I could have, the foundational stage is so important because I don't want a little mistake to be the reason why everything has to crumble. So just being patient on this road is the toughest thing, I'd say.
And when it comes to insurance credentialing, your network with Aetna, Optum, Cigna, Florida Blue, and a bunch of others, what was that process like? How long did it take? And what would you tell someone just starting?
The way I was able to be credentialed with so many different insurances was actually by casting that wider net of being on growth therapy, by being on Headway, because there are certain insurances that are allowed on one platform that aren't allowed on the other platform. So that's a good thing. Now, the caveat to that is once Sound Advice would have its own, brick and mortar office, um, I'd have to restart the credentialing process all over again because I'm only in network through Headway and Growth Therapy. Now, the good thing is that my license is tied to that. Therefore, it would be easier since they're going to be familiar with my license and they're going to see that there hasn't been any red marks or any issues. Any there nothing bad has happened with them being in network with me. So I'm hoping it'll be a smooth transition to being credentialed just through Sound Advice, not Headway and Growth Therapy.
Makes complete sense. And You're doing telehealth across all of Florida. What does compliance and documentation look like, and how much time are you spending on notes and admin versus actually seeing clients?
You know, thankfully we live in an age where there are tools that I definitely use, whether it's NoteGen to record and transcribe the session, or whether it's, ChatGPT to formalize a new treatment plan review, or to do my soap notes based on how the session went. So because of how because of where we are right now with tech, um, I'd say I'd finish the note within, I don't think it takes too much time. I usually do them when I'm winding down, drinking some coffee, listening to music. It doesn't take too much time. So before, that was one of my weaknesses. Just the clinical writing is so specific, and it was a huge weakness of mine. I remember both internships I had in grad school, that was the one recommendation my supervisors always had. But it's just, thankfully, I don't have that problem anymore.
And what does your tech stack look like right now between the EHR, scheduling, billing, telehealth platform? I know you mentioned a few just moments ago, but if you could list off kind of the most useful ones top of mind, what is it that you're using?
Yeah. NoteGen for transcribing and recording the sessions. I use chat to formulate treatment plans. Um, there's this AI that Google has. I believe it's called Notebook LM. And the reason why that one is so cool is because I'm able to upload PDFs, or I'm able to upload Word documents of just, for example, how the session went. And what it will do, it will almost turn it into a conversation between two people just going over what the documents had. And the reason why I like that so much is because I could just go on a walk, go on a run while I'm listening to the session notes, or whatever the heck, whatever I uploaded. Those are the most useful to me right now.
And what about the tech that you hate? Is there anything that creates bottlenecks where you wish, like, hey, like this feature is very annoying, or um, this feature is perhaps missing from this one app?
You know, it's impossible for there to be one that encapsulates everything, right? So I always run, it's hard not to run into that, where maybe one app or has one feature that the other doesn't. But truthfully, I don't want to say there's any off the top of my head. There's not necessarily nothing that I hate about it. It's just I've kind of come to live with, okay, I'll go here for this, I'll go here for that. I would love for there to be one that's all encapsulating, but until there is, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that there's these tools that now. It's way better without them. So I don't know if hate would be the right word.
If you could wave a magic wand and fix one tech problem in your practice tomorrow, what would it be?
Um, if I could wave a magic wand, it would be talking, you know, after the session is recorded, including certain, or talking to that AI to include certain things, whether it's like, oh, update the treatment plan based off what this person said during this session at this time. Uh, I know it's just a matter of time before we get there. So again, it's just patiently waiting.
And with mental health billing being notoriously complicated, different CPT codes, prior authorizations, session limits, what's been your experience navigating that?
You know, I'd say that before I started Sound Advice, and just looking at it from an employee perspective, that was super scary, because I've always heard of worst case scenarios, bad, bad stories. But actually being in it, I'm thankful to both growth therapy and headway because I've never had an issue with any insurances. Every now and then they send me clinical case reviews, and I have to get on the phone with certain insurances and just talk about the clients. And my experience has never not been positive. They've been the recommendations they give and just the resources they give has been, a huge help. I personally didn't expect that was going to be the kind of like climate I was going to be facing with them. I thought it was going to be they were going to be cold, or I thought they were going to, be more against me, but they're on my side. So I've thankfully I've never had an issue with that.
When it comes to no shows and late cancellations, how do you typically handle those? Do you have a policy in place and how do you enforce it?
So Grow Therapy and Headway, they have their own cancellation policy, but truthfully, uh, I don't charge for no shows and I don't charge for late cancellations. I know that that's a policy that at some point in the future I'm gonna have to change, but these people that come to me, I don't want to. I know how life can get, so I don't want to put a price on not seeing me. Especially when they've been with me this far. So as of now, there's no. I don't have a policy for them. I take off the amount whenever Headway or Growth Therapy says to charge them. So yeah, they don't have that.
And burnout is very real in mental health. Like being 3 years into this, strapped for time, how are you protecting your own mental health while taking care of everyone else's?
Last year was a very big year. I saw my own therapist, and I'm thankful to have him in my corner. Um, my wife is a huge support pillar for me as well. Um, Jiu-jitsu, taking time to do my hobbies, taking time to enjoy it with my daughter. I have a lot of support around me that although I am doing a lot, it doesn't feel that way because of how much support I have, you know.
Building the right systems in place and everything that you just described is one massive ecosystem towards supporting you. And for me, I would say my strongest, uh, I guess you could say, piece of that system has been physical activity. Like you mentioned jujitsu. I love jits. Like, in fact, I love it more than kickboxing, which I do a lot more of. I just tend to prioritize kickboxing for self-defense. And that coupled with weightlifting, like for me, I enjoy training every day. And a part of it isn't because necessarily I feel like my body needs it. It's more so for my mental health. Like I feel I've gotten to the point where if I don't go to gym that day, like I go every day, that's my policy. I have to do like something every day, whether it's kickboxing or hitting the gym or some sort of cardio. Like for me, I feel like my day is wasted if I don't do it, which in a
For
sense
sure.
is negative framing because it's like I tell myself I almost don't feel the positive effects. The expectation, the net zero is to go to the gym, and if I don't go to the gym, then it becomes a negative, which is probably not the best way to frame it. But it's helped me make sure that like I go regardless of what happens. And obviously, there's those days where it's like, hey, maybe it was a rough night last night. Maybe I drank a little too much, especially with the holidays. We just had it was New Year's, and then oh man, maybe not feeling the best on January 1st, and in not the right headspace to go to the gym.
Definitely.
But other than those days, like just every day, some sort of physical activity, I would say has helped me sustain myself and continue to put in work and continue to put in uh, 8, 10, 12 hour work days, even on weekends for the startups that we have, because startups can be very brutal. It's very fun starting a new startup. It's very exciting to start a new project. But then you're 3 months into it, 6 months into it, 12 months into it, and it's a battlefield, and you're fighting every day.
Yeah,
And you have to have those support systems in place to really help you.
I completely agree with you. You know, I owe a lot to jujitsu. It's what got me through grad school. It's what got me through a lot of tough times. But um, it's I think there's just something about the personal growth um that I still carry to this day, and like the mentality about around it. Yeah. So I couldn't agree more with what you said.
Let's shift gears. Tell me about a time when everything clicked, whether it be a session, a client breakthrough, or a moment where you thought, this is exactly why I do this.
Before, uh, before sound advice, just because of where I was working and the way I was doing it, it was very hard to see. Imposter syndrome was happening a lot. Sometimes it's very hard to see if what you're doing does count, but nowadays that doesn't happen nearly as much as before. And the main reason why is because I think the best compliment I could ever receive, and I have received a few of these, is seeing that person say that, you know what, I think I want to do counseling. I think I want to be a therapist. That to me is whether they end up following through with it or not, that to me is the best compliment I could ever receive, because that just shows me that the way I helped this person feel or the way I helped this person think was to the point where now they want to help others. And I can't change the world, but like this, it could be cool. You know, like this is the closest thing to it, you know?
100%. And I can definitely see that translating in a few other professions where it's like, it can really inspire the youth. The youth look at you and say, you know what, like, wow, this is impressive. Like, I want to do that. And I've never had anyone tell me that, but I can imagine kind of the pride that one feels hearing that from
Yeah.
someone.
It's the best. I always there's a quote that goes, people forget what you say, people forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. And you know, that's right. That's it right there.
And you've got 88 reviews and a 5-star rating on Girl Therapy. One client wrote that you're not just my therapist, but a friend. What does that feedback mean to you?
That means the world to me, because what that client said, it's not just on his end, it's also on my end. I feel the same way. And it's almost hard for me not to feel that way when I've been through I give so much of myself to them, and I'm as available as I am to them. Um, you know, I had this my qualified supervisor that I had during my internship. She was a tremendous help, and she always told me something. She said, don't work harder than them, you know, meet them where they're at. And that to me was the hardest, just because I feel like there's sometimes all these people need is a person to devote more than what they can devote to, you know? And I know that's something that, like I said, it's not sustainable. It cannot be like that forever. But that's my bread and butter. You know, that's what I feel like is my primary source of strength. In terms of like my tools as an arsenal of a therapist, I'm not the best when it comes to theories. I'm not the best when it comes to this, that, or the third. What I feel like I am really good at is just caring and being there for them. And, you know, I feel like that translates to the reviews I've gotten, or, you know, but yeah, they're all my friends.
And if your clients could describe what's changed since working with you, what would they say?
I hope that they would say that uh, I've shown them that what they're going through is temporary. and there's going to be trials and tribulations in life. And just because it might feel like the end of the world today doesn't mean that it's going to be the end of the world tomorrow. Uh, I've gotten I've gotten a phone call, this takes me back to like a specific time where I got a phone call after hours where there was a client that was ready to take his life. And because of the connection we had, I was able to talk him down to it. I was able to get him to call his mom in, go to the hospital. And I was able, I'm glad that he was able to go to the hospital, and, he's alive today. So that, that all goes back to providing, and being there for them and just not expecting anything in return.
Mhm. And if everything goes the way you're hoping, what does sound advice look like in 2 to 3 years?
We have an in-person office where there's a few interns running around, getting their feet wet, starting out, being thrown to the wolves, just like I was. And I'll still see my clients that I'm seeing. Um, Sound Advice would have, weekly group therapies. I'm hoping that by then we could do something for the elderly as well. I would like to have an elderly because that population is just probably one that is the loneliest, and they just need someone to care about them again. So whether that could be about, having a van pick them up and have them there, play a little dominoes, play some games, watch some shows together, and again, be a part of a community. That's all I could ask for.
You're building something very real. What advice would you give to someone just finishing their master's who wants to give the private practice a go?
It they have to be willing to prove themselves wrong, and to do what scares them the most. I remember that um this was always the end goal, but I didn't think, or I didn't know that it happened right now. It took a lot of for me, it took a lot of people telling me no for me to just say, fine, then I'm gonna do it myself. And there's a lot of fear that comes with that. And the one thing I'd say is do it with fear. That way you could, because then at that point, it's all the more worthwhile. And then when you get to prove yourself wrong that you could do it.
And that has a lot to do with trying things for the first time. There is usually a little bit of fear involved when attempting things for the first time, and that's only natural.
Yeah. No, for sure. And, whether it's expectations that it could go wrong or all of that, all of that is possible for sure, but you never know until you try.
What's one thing you wish you knew before you started?
The, I wish that I could have invested more in myself rather than investing in other things or other people's dreams. Invest in your own dream because it's gonna be the most worthwhile, and that's another thing I'd say to people who are finishing their masters.
And finding that dream, I think, is a challenge within itself. I think that that ties very nicely into the quote that you mentioned at the start. How is it that you want to be remembered? Which is a very big question.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And, kind of going back full circle, that's what um that's what this is all about. This year, I hope I have the opportunity to return to my high school and give a talk to the current seniors where I'm gonna ask them all that same question. And that's what the career in the AI era is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a talk. It's supposed to be some sort of course where I help these, people in that age range figure out that question, not by putting pressure on them, but by trying things that excite them. It's more of I want that I want to turn that into a lab. I want them to try. I want them to fail. I want them to do things that excite them, do things that drain them, and then just kind of figure out what's the one that they like the most, you know?
Yeah, I often think about there was one time I think when I was in like grade 10 or grade 11, there was a group of university students or they just graduated university that were ex-graduates of the school. And I always think back to that moment for some reason. I think to myself, okay, if I was to return to my high school, because this year it's actually going to be a 10-year anniversary since graduation, and I'm sure someone's going to be throwing some sort of a party. Myself being halfway across the world, I don't know if I'll have a chance to attend it, but I just think to myself, like, what would I tell um, that young grade 12 guy uh, if I was to get either sent back in time or if given the opportunity to speak in front of the 12th grade, like what is it that I would say? What kind of knowledge would I pass down?
Well,
Um,
what would it be? What do you think you would say?
I think it's like personally for me, I was so focused on uh, just raw performance and raw grades that I never gave myself the permission to explore myself in the more creative fields.
Yeah.
And so, for example, the kind of work that I do around tech, sales, marketing, presentations in the startup space, it's like I'm given all the freedom to be as creative as I want versus before I thought I was limited to uh, just doing calculations, solving engineering puzzles, which is also great. It's not to take away from it, but I put limitations on myself and
Right.
my capabilities, and it all goes back to the mindset that people have when they're adolescents. It's the mindset is the most important thing.
And it's all about guidance, right? I know that, we've talked a little bit about, you know, how it was for you. And we could both say that your parents were a huge support system. Maybe teachers were there, but it's just, I feel like maybe that's not enough. Rather, having someone who could dedicate just to that specific. If only we had someone back in grade 12 where it's like, hey, I know that you're focused on this, but it would benefit you so much to also explore this. Would have made a whole much difference, not just to your life, but also to my life. Here in Miami, back when I was in elementary school, there was this kind of like theme park, kind of action park called Wanna City. They closed this down back in 2011, but essentially what Wanna City did, kids went there and they were all tasked. All right, pick a job. You want to be doctors? Go to the hospital. You want to be cops? Go to the police station. You want to be lawyers? Go to the courtroom. And essentially it was a day where they fought, they were trained and they did these things. And whatever happened, what I want to do with I want to bring the essence of that back and like give these kids back these options. Clearly, I'm not saying I'm going to start the park or anything, but it's just that message, that core message of you should try things out before setting yourself on a path. Um, and who knows, right? Maybe they're not ready for that right now. Maybe they're not ready to ask themselves that question, or maybe they're not ready to answer what they want to leave behind when it's their turn. But at least they'll remember that there's this person that came to their school that one time and said, once they are ready, I'm here to have that conversation and just guide them. So yeah.
And what you just said, I think, is something very important because when I was selecting the university, when I was selecting the program that I wanted to get into, I haven't really spoken to a single civil engineer before deciding to do civil engineering. And then it turned out that I also wanted to switch from civil to mechanical because I didn't enjoy things equaling out to zero. I wanted more movement within my calculations. And I haven't spoken to a single outside of my dad who after immigrating to Canada, his degree wasn't really counted as an engineering degree. He had to do more stuff on the technician side around cameras and alarms, satellite dishes, more so the installation as opposed to like the true engineering work of design. So by that point, I've spoken to precisely zero engineers, and that was I think a big mistake of mine um, to decide that I want to dedicate 5 years of my life coupled with like a
Yeah.
whole career path
Yeah.
without having to speak to a single person. And at no point after deciding my role can I think of anyone ever telling me, "Hey, how many engineers have you spoken to before deciding to pursue this path?" My parents were just happy that, hey, like he's an engineer, he's going to be an engineer, doctor, or a lawyer, and that's good enough for us. It's the traditional kind of USSR mentality of like, hey, you're either going to be an engineer or you're going to go into the army
Yeah.
or something else technical. Like that's the traditional post-Soviet and Soviet mindset of hey, you're going to be one of these three things that are going to benefit society, and if as long as it's one of those three things, you should be fine.
And that's another reason why we feel like maybe we shouldn't explore other options or have that kind of guidance because of expectations, expectations to not fail, expectations to live up to family. But I don't want to say that that's bad. I just want to say that that shouldn't be the only thing, right? And a lot of this just comes from not having that guidance. And that guidance should also be outside of the home, outside of the school.
Mentors.
Yeah. Yeah. And just trying things again, but maybe the real question is they don't know what to try because maybe they don't know themselves yet. And the best way to know yourselves is by getting as much life experience as possible, failing, you know, not being
Absolutely.
not being afraid to be the fool, to try something even if we're horrible at it at first. We all are. Look at jujitsu. I remember getting my butt kicked for the first 6 months before I could at least pull a move off right?
Yep. Yeah, martial arts is great with that, and many people that reach high levels and just talk about it. Like they learn more about life in jujitsu and martial arts that are similar than anything else that they do in life. And um, one last question, because tracking that we're running short on time. Where can people find you? If someone wants to work with you or just follow your journey, where should they go?
Right now, we're trying to get the social media up and running. They could find us at soundadvice.care on Instagram, LinkedIn, Julio Acosta, um, Psychology Today. We're also on Headway and Growth Therapy, but yeah.
Love it. And Julio, thank you so much for your time. Like I think you have a very authentic, very genuine approach. And when you said that you do jujitsu, like that's when it clicked for me. I'm like, man, like this, there's so many down to earth guys in jits that are just very genuine, truthful. I've always had the best relationship, the best relationships with guys in jits. There's just something about them. Kickboxing, I feel like there's more ego involved because you're actually hitting each other, but jits
Right.
is a lot more restrained. And so it's a very unique type of personality. And the moment you said that you do jits, it just clicked for me. Like, man, like this is exactly um, the type of person that you would find in a jujitsu class.
And I totally thank you, man. I feel the same way, and we'll have to plan something in the future for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Maybe we'll do a round two of the podcast.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thank you.
Thank you. And for everyone listening, if you like the conversation, check out the other episodes on the operators where we talk to people actually running medical practices. And we'll see you next time.